Good evening, fellow preppers. This is LA Prepper here for this Sunday, September 17th, 2017. 2017. I can still remember 2000. It was 17 years ago. I can probably remember a little further back than that, but we are getting off topic. Let's talk tonight about sustainability, or being able to, a lot of people say that word. In case you're not familiar with it, it means being able to maintain, what you're doing. It's actually, I guess it's kind of a difficult word to describe. But for example, if you were to take food, if you had a sustainable source of food, and that's the first thing on the list, that might consist of a vegetable garden with a sustainable source of water. Not to get ahead of myself, it might include some farm animals. Not just farm animals, produce, not produce, I want to say production, animals, but animals, that you're growing with the purpose of slaughtering. Whether it be rabbits, sheep, goats, beef, chicken, fish, any variety. And of course, to say like, I'm going to have chickens that'll feed me forever, you have to be familiar with, just to take chickens as an example, make sure that you have food for them, or that they have somewhere that they can graze at least. Chickens, I don't know if you know this, but chickens basically destroy the topsoil. Not the topsoil, but they sort of destroy and peck and scratch at like the top layer. Like the soil is still the soil, but they tear it up. All the plants are gone. It's all roughed up. So I don't know if you guys ever seen, they call them chicken tractors, which is kind of a funny name, but they typically you just drag them with something, or you push them. But the idea is, let's say, this is a chicken tractor, and this is like a big field. You have the chickens in one spot, and then you move them, give them a week or so, or however long you want to give them, depending on how many chickens you have, and then you move them, you move them, you move them, you move them. Because if you just left them on one spot, not only would the dirt get all roughed up and it wouldn't come back, but the ground and the vegetation and such. But you'd have to keep feeding them, and they'd be on their shit. They'd just be living in their filth. So that's why you rotate them. You can get they're like an automatic manure plant where they eat bugs, and they kind of, keep stuff down, and then you move them, and then, you can wait, you can either rake it, however you want to process that land that has the chicken manure on it. I'm sure there are appropriate ways to process it. I'm not a farmer yet, but so the point I was trying to make is that you can't just say, I'm going to buy a goat that'll feed my family. I don't mean to be too tongue-in-cheek about it, but, there's a big difference between having a pound of wheat and processing a pound of wheat, growing wheat, and, waiting for it to grow, and then cutting it, and then milling it, or however you want to process your wheat. So, to be sustainable food wise, it's so difficult in the city. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I have an apartment. Am I going to keep rabbits in my apartment? No. Could I keep meat rabbits in my apartment? Yeah, there's probably some law in the city that I live in, about how many rabbits I could have in my apartment. I don't really want my apartment full of rabbits. I don't know how many rabbits. I don't, I probably wouldn't even want to eat like that much rabbit meat per week. Like maybe a rabbit or two a week or something. But I don't know if I'm trying to eat like out of, say, 3 meals a day times 7 days a week, and I don't even eat like that in general. But out of 21 meals, I'm not trying to have more than like 3 or 4 rabbit meals, or 3 or 4 pork meals, or 3 or 4 chicken meals. I don't want to have 20 chicken meals or 20 beef meals. Like, it's not good. It's not good for your diet. Um, Personal taste aside, if there was a magic food and you only ate the magic food and that was the healthiest you could ever be, I don't care what it was, as long as it was palatable, I would eat it. It would be boring and awful. But if we knew you just that's all you eat and you'll be super healthy, I would eat that. But I'm a little bigger fan of diversity myself. So I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about food, but suffice it to say, being sustainable on the food front is if you don't have a farm, and even if you do have a farm or some land, it can be very challenging. Now, it's not impossible. You can definitely do community garden stuff. You can grow on other people's land. There's some great YouTube videos about this guy that works full time growing crops in other people's front yards. Crazy. Not crazy, just non-typical. Water. Do you have a stream in your house? Your backyard? I don't. Um, I have a pool up the street, which has a lot of chlorine in it, but presumably I might be able to filter that out somehow or distill it. If you're near the ocean, you could distill that water. It does take some heat energy, but until we run out of trees, which, believe me, in the city will happen. Excuse me, I drank the water too fast there. Um, but being sustainable on your water, does it rain a lot where you are? Or if you're trying to collect rainwater and you're in Arizona, you might get a monsoon once in a while, but what are you going to do for water? After your water heater's empty, even if you have a bathtub water saver and you filled it up, you're going to run out of that. Are you going to walk to the ocean? I'm 30 miles to the ocean. I'm not going to drive my car to the ocean. You would think, well, if you had a car during WRL, why wouldn't you drive it to the ocean? Because I like my car, and I like my car safe, and I would rather leave it here with my neighbors and say, watch my car, than, you might think, well, you're going to be a lot safer in a car. Well, I might be, but getting water isn't necessarily an emergency. Yeah, it's important to live, but I'm not trying to get water when I'm completely out of water. So let's say I have 30 gallons of water, which I don't right now, but let's say that I did, and I get down to 10 gallons, and I say, okay, this is way too low. I gotta get some more water. Um, I could put all my things in my car and just go drive and get some water, but I only have so much gas. Now, granted, the gas isn't going to last forever, but you know, I would prefer to take a bicycle with a trailer or on foot in a wagon, and maybe with a friend or something. I mean, that's how you choose to move about the land is actually really cool. It would be a really great video. Um, but the point number two, the item water, are you sustainable with your water? I am not right now. I have some water saved up. I have a water filter. I have a big flat roof. Winter is coming. Big Game of Thrones joke, right? But um, it doesn't rain a lot in California. But I could, it would be interesting to collect water. The only problem is I don't think my landlord wants me jumping up on the roof. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they don't. So, I mean, I could, if I really wanted to, I don't know, try to finagle something, but I'm trying to play, and that's why you got to own your own house. You don't have to worry about asking people for permission. That's the tough part about living in the city. It's not so much that you're in the city. If I had a home in the city, oh man, I'd be in a million times better shape. But being in an apartment in the city, you're really limited to what you can do. Like, I gotta leave all my gasoline downstairs, for example. Granted, keeping gasoline in the house isn't really the greatest idea, and I don't have a garage, but just little things like all the flammable stuff has to be outside. But I'm getting off topic. So, food sustainability, water sustainability, energy sustainability. You might have batteries. Do you have rechargeable batteries? Do you have solar power? Do you have 12 volts? Do you have something to power something bigger? Do you have an inverter? You might have a panel and a 12 volt and say, hey, I'm good. And then you realize your laptop or your iPhone charger runs off 120 volts. So do you have an inverter? Do you know what an inverter is? If you're watching this video, you probably know what an inverter is. But if you just Googled WROL because you want to know what it means, an inverter is something that changes the voltage. So if you're generating at 12 volts and you want to get some power at 120 volts, I believe the inverter also gives you DC to AC as opposed to a transformer, which is like the classical voltage shift. But at any rate, being energy sustainable isn't just about generating power, it's about getting power in the right voltage to your supplies, to your items. It's about having rechargeable things. Um, it takes a little bit, and batteries don't last forever. You can only recharge a battery so many times, you can only recharge a lead battery so many times. Do you know how to maintain a lead battery? Do you know how to check the cells? Do you have a hygrometer? If you have 20 lead batteries for whatever reason, you got a bunch of backups and serials and RVs and cars, but you don't have one hygrometer. How sustainable is your battery situation? Do you have any battery acid? Do you have any distilled water? Are you going to put tap water in your batteries that's going to shorten the life? Um, so, if you want to be energy sustainable, it's a lot more than just I have a solar panel or I have a battery. You have to look at the whole thing together. So, security. How sustainable is your security? Are you all guns? Going to run out of bullets eventually, depending on how much you use them. Unless you have hundreds of thousands of rounds. I'm not that fortunate, but you might. Do you have a bow and arrow? Do you have a crossbow? Do you have knives? Do you have spears? Do you have things that you can use over and over and over again? Are you considering reloading your own ammo? Do you know how to make gunpowder? Do you know how to make saltpeter from scratch? Do you know how to get sulfur? Do you know how to make charcoal from scratch? Do you have a scale? Do you have a scale that's not digital to weigh the proper gunpowder loads? I don't know how to load gunpowder. That'd be something that'd be great to add on to my skills, but I don't. I really don't have the money. I have the time, but I just don't have the money to be adding that kind of hobby. I need to prep a little bit more and kind of get my supplies a little bit more in order before I'm worrying about taking on new crazy hobbies like loading my ammo. But security wise, just kind of plan on you don't always want to be using things that you're going to run out of. That's the whole idea of sustainability is the difference between someone who just has a bunch of stuff stored and someone who lives sustainably is that someone who lives sustainably, they don't they're not too worried about going hungry. If you're making so many vegetables in your garden that you can't even eat, like if you're harvesting basically year round and you're harvesting more than you can eat in a day, you're living sustainably. Now, granted, that might be eating only vegetables, and maybe that's not the best diet. I guess a few million people across the world do live like that, but that's a whole separate point. I suppose if you had enough beans and vegetables, beans are a little bit harder to grow, but still, nonetheless, I mean, they're not quite as quick, I don't think, as vegetables to grow. But you know, the whole key is sustainability. Can you sustain yourself? So you cannot store enough of whatever you're trying to store forever, probably, unless you have a million 22, long rifle rounds. But by and large, most people that aren't on a ranch, that aren't making 5 or 6 figures a year, that don't have thousands of dollars a month, because let's be honest, some of you preppers have a lot of money, and that's awesome. And I don't hold it against anyone for being in a different financial position than I am. Not to say that I'm not sitting on stacks of paper or that I couldn't spend thousands of dollars on preps tomorrow if I wanted to, but the point is, no matter how much you can store, if all you're planning on doing is storing stuff, you're going to run out eventually. So you have to be thinking about, how do I renew my supply? How do I make more food, gather more food, hunt more food, grow more food, whether it's vegetable or animal? Water, how do I collect more water, get more water? Energy, security, logistics. How sustainable are your logistics? You have a bicycle. How many spare tubes do you have? Do you know how to fix a flat? You might say, I've got a great car. It's super reliable. I have a Jeep. And I don't even think Jeeps are as reliable as the Japanese cars, to be honest. I wouldn't. Honestly, I'd go get an old 4Runner. You want a good 4x4 for end of the world? Get an old 4Runner. Way more reliable than a Jeep. Trust me, Jeeps are. I love America, but Chrysler just doesn't make the best vehicles, unfortunately. At least, not in the Jeep sense. Don't hate on me for hating Jeeps. I've driven a lot of Jeeps. My family's had a lot of Jeeps, and they've cost them a lot of money in repairs. They're great when they work. I'll say that about Jeeps. They're great when they work. But your logistics, how reliable are your logistics? Do you have gas? Do you have fuel stabilizer? You know, you might have 100 gallons of gas. You know how long that gas is going to last? About 6 months to a year. So after a year, what are you going to do? You're just going to barter your gas off for some fresh gas? Well, who has fresh gas? Nobody's been making gas. I don't think you're going to learn how to make gas. You know, do you have an electric vehicle? Electric vehicle would be a lot more sustainable than a gas vehicle. If you have a diesel vehicle, I suppose there'll be some chemists or somebody making biofuel. Man, if you could make biofuel in WROL, you'd be doing all right. You'd be doing all right because there's people running around that can run biofuel right now, and they're not necessarily preppers. They're just they're whatever. They're eco or they have a diesel or who knows what. But um, sustainability in your logistics, it's very important. Do you have a spare timing belt? Do you have plugs? Do you have valves? Do you know how to work on your car? Do you know how to work on your bicycle? Do you know how to work on your wheelbarrow? Do you know how to repair a patch in your boat? Do you have an extra pair of shoes? How many pairs of shoes do you have? You know, logistics involves moving around on your feet too. So if you have one pair of running shoes or hiking shoes, but you have $10,000 of guns, buy two more pairs of hiking shoes instead of more ammo, you know? And I'm just kind of like picking on random examples there, but whatever logistics you have, no matter how amazing they are, keep in mind how sustainable it is. Um, Communication. If you have batteries, they're going to go dead eventually, unless you're charging them with solar. Even if batteries don't last forever, do you know Morse code? How many types of communication do you have? Do you, do you have signaling devices that don't require batteries, mirrors, or something that's more low energy, like a laser or something? Or, I don't know really where I'm going too much with this communication sustainability really ties a lot into energy. They really all tie into each other, kind of interestingly. But energy, food and water are the big ones for, don't die. Energy is really a big one for keeping everything else smooth. Energy can help give you food. Energy can help get you water. Energy can help keep you secure, keeping lights on, keeping motion sensors working. Energy can help you fix your vehicle, can help you transport. Energy keeps your communication up. Energy is really key. I have it listed number 3 here, right below food and water. We take energy for granted. It is so cheap. Electricity is super cheap. I mean, I ran my AC like all month, almost, because my apartment has really awful ventilation. I got a $30 electricity bill. So, last but not least, I'm getting kind of thirsty here, and this video is getting kind of long. Tools and hardware. So, you have a chainsaw. You have a handsaw, you have a hacksaw, you have a hatchet and an axe. Cool. I don't have any of those things right now. Poor me. Do you have a spare filter for your chainsaw? Do you have files to sharpen your chainsaw and your blade and your other tools? Do you have, the oil? How much two-stroke oil do you have? You have a chainsaw. If you only have one bottle of two-stroke oil, or if you only have a couple bottles of two-stroke, buy a couple gallons. Even if it's not WROL, like let's say you're in Houston or Florida, it would be equally unfortunate to run out of two-stroke oil in WRL and in a national emergency. In fact, I would almost feel worse about it in an emergency because, if it's the end of the world, then it's whatever. You run out of shit, you run out of shit. That sucks. But if it's an emergency and you run out of something, you're not able to help someone that's in need at that moment. So I think it's almost more of a shame to not be prepared in normal times, because all those people in Texas that are protecting their neighbors from looters, everyone that's in their vehicles and their boats, um, helping people evacuate, move supplies, whatever it may be, you can guarantee that the owners of those boats that kept them running, that kept them gassed, that kept the trailers in good condition, that used them regularly. You know, if you have a boat and you haven't ran it in 6 months, you are not probably going to turn the key and hear it turn over. Maybe you have a new engine. Maybe you're super smart about how you store your boat. You drain everything and then you fill everything back up, and you're just a motor god. But by and large, in my opinion, I think the people that got out there were probably the people that go out all the time. They're the outdoorsmen. They're the people that are always out in their trucks. They're always out in their boats. The people that are defending their neighbors, they go to the range. Their gun wasn't locked away and gathering dust. They knew exactly where to get it. They knew what the combination was if it was locked. They knew that they had used it recently, probably at least within the last year or something. So the point is, no matter how many tools and what kind of hardware you have, you got to keep in mind, do you have a way to maintain it? A knife doesn't stay sharp forever. An axe handle won't stay secure on the shaft forever. Do you have little axe head wedges? Little things like that. So this was a really long video. I apologize, but I think oftentimes, a lot of us sort of, myself included, think of sustainability as like, well, when I have a ranch or when I have a house, that it's too hard to be sustainable. I can't put a bunch of solar panels on my roof. And, to a certain extent, we are all kind of limited by our circumstances. But no matter what individual circumstance you might be in, try to look at your items not as, do I have enough for a week? Do I have enough a month? Every time you look at something related to prepping, think, if this had to last me forever, would it? Would this last me forever? Or would it at least last me long enough to replace it? I don't need a knife to last me forever, but I at least need to be able to sharpen it and keep it working until I can make another knife. So, thanks for watching. I know this was kind of a long video, but sustainability is going to be the key to our survival. Thanks so much and have a great night.